Hello, 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 everybody. Ernest White II here. Welcome to the Fly Brother Radio Show, which is a podcast all about travel and culture. Today's guest is Ms. Kim Haas. She is the executive producer, host, and creator of Afro-Latino Travels with Kim Haas. She's been active in Afro-Latino issues for more than a decade, and she's a founder of a blog celebrating Afro-Latino culture called losafrolatinos.com. Kim speaks fluent Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. She served as director of marketing for WWSI TV, Telemundo, and she's also served as an on-camera pledge host in English, Spanish, and Italian for WYBE TV in Philadelphia. She's a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and she is passionate about her work with Afro-Latino Travels. She's also extremely proud to be one of the few Black female travel hosts on public television, leading the path for more to follow. Ms. Kim Haas, how you doing?
How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for being here. We've chatted before on probably, I think it might have been an Instagram live that we did with Fly Brother, but also you and I have crossed paths several times at a couple of industry events, including the American Public Television. I believe it might have been the Fall Marketplace in Baltimore a few years ago, but
just a few.
Yes, a year ago or two.
Yes.
So we looked just like we look now. We have not aged a day.
Exactly. That's right.
But yes, it is so. It's wonderful to connect with you again. I'm excited for the fact that you've got a new episode of Afro-Latino Travels with Kim Haas coming out on public television in Cali, Colombia. Cali chévere. Las caleñas son como las flores. Cali, amazing city. I've been there a couple times. Please tell us about Afro-Latino Travels, first of all. Tell us about that series.
Sure. Well, no, thank you again. And, so Afro-Latino Travels, and when I was on a couple of years ago with you, we were talking about the Costa Rica episodes, which were the inaugural episodes. And it's been my dream for years to really celebrate and honor Blacks in Latin America. And if people aren't familiar, 1 in 3 people in Latin America have African ancestry. And so it was really important. It was really important for me to celebrate and honor these people and these communities that had gone for centuries without representation and feeling invisible and feeling like sometimes Afro-Latinos would tell me in different countries, that they didn't feel like they matter. And so I just always wanted through my travels, and you travel and you meet all these wonderful people. And so I'm traveling to Colombia and Brazil and Puerto Rico and Venezuela, and I'm meeting all these people that look like you and me. And yet when I turn on the television and I turn on Spanish language television, I don't see any of these people, any of these fantastic musicians, because I love the arts, and dancers and chefs and home cooks and artists, painters. But there's just a wealth of them throughout Latin America. And so that's how I came up with the idea, again, about at least 12 years ago. And I just had a hard time getting sponsorship because, as you know, for public television, you have to come with your show already done and prepared for the most part. And so I had to have the funding ready to shoot, and I was looking for support. And, 12 years ago, people weren't talking about Afro-Latinos like they are now. So when I'd go and pitch it to a corporation, a foundation, there just wasn't any interest. And I'd say, I want to do a show that celebrates, the history and cultural accomplishments of Blacks, people who look like me, people who look like you, Ernest, in Latin America. And it just went nowhere. Until finally...
I didn't mean to laugh. It was your hand movement. The hand movement of going nowhere. I can relate. That was...
Yeah, it went. maybe I should have gone nowhere.
Yeah,
It should have been like that
it was an
instead of
interpretive
nowhere, but
dance.
nowhere.
Yes.
There you go. Yes,
Sorry,
it
and I
was.
was so not laughing
No,
at the
no,
situation, but it was definitely your
no,
delivery.
please. If you don't laugh at some of this stuff, you cry. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
yes, I do
Yeah,
know. Yes.
yes. And I've shed many a tears. And so, so finally, fast forward, and Costa Rica, thank goodness the Costa Rica Tourism Board said, yes, we want to do this and we want to help support you. And we wound up shooting in Costa Rica a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And then we shot in Cali and Buenaventura and San Cipriano in Colombia. And so those are the two episodes that are starting to air now for Hispanic Heritage Month on
Love
public
it.
television.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Super excited about that. Now, when is Hispanic Heritage Month for those who may be listening after this airs?
Sure,
We'll be
yes.
listening after this airs, obviously, but
Yes.
after Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yeah, so Hispanic Heritage Month is September 15th through October 15th. And it really
Hmm.
starts with the Independence Day of several Latin American countries, and then, which is around the 14th, 15th, and then it runs through for a month. So we have until October 15th. But, as I say, and I think a lot of people say, look, I'm African American. I love Latino culture. I love celebrating Afro-Latinos. We can do this all year round. So it
Hmm.
doesn't just stop during Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yes.
And, it's important to recognize the communities, the people, 365.
Absolutely, 100%. And
Yeah.
it's something that we do at Fly Brother. It's something that I know several storytellers of various backgrounds are doing, is celebrating all of us. Certainly,
Yes.
those of us that are coming from communities of color and have had shoehorned experiences. We are telling these stories year round and are highlighting, just the beauty of our stories, our cultures, our just the vibranium of it all. And that's something I wanted you to touch on a little bit. So I too am African American,
Mm-hmm.
however, have spent extensive time in Latin America and also, speak Spanish, speak Portuguese, have been mistaken
Yeah.
for Afro-Latino, and there can be sometimes contention in terms of the understanding of how our communities are connected. But could you talk about the connections between
Yeah.
African Americans and Afro-Latinos?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, thank you for that. Well, I
Hmm.
think some of it starts off with not having a knowledge of the transatlantic slave route, right?
Sure.
Because that's
Yes.
where this all started. And so to simplify it, some of the ships that carried enslaved Africans went kind of north, right, to North America,
Hmm.
to the
Yeah.
United States, and then folks traveled to Canada and so forth. And then the great majority, though, what is it, 80, 90% went to the Caribbean, Central, and South America. And so that's basically it in a nutshell, is that some people's families, ancestors were on ships that went to North America, and some were on ships that went to Central and South America. And so we have this commonality. We have this ancestry, if you look at it
Hmm.
over generations, but we all originating or having some ancestry from Africa.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that's how it started. That's how it all started. But you've got it centuries ago during the transatlantic slave route. And so I think what happens often is that we don't learn about it in school. But thank goodness, because I'm meeting more and more college professors, high school professors who want to explain on a
Mm.
larger scale, the transatlantic slave route, how people of African descent wound up in Latin America, so that their students, so that we learn the commonalities, the connections, that there's more in common, that we have so many connections. Um, but it all started with the transatlantic slave route and where your ancestors originated, where they came from. But for the most part, it's part of that western coast of Africa, which we all have in common in some form or fashion. And then it's just whether your ancestors were in Cuba or Brazil or Charleston.
Hmm.
So we can look to that as our origins, as our
Yes.
commonality, and then learn from each other how fascinating it is. I know you've spent time in Brazil, and so much of Brazilian culture and what people love about Brazil comes out of the Afro-Brazilian experience. And then if you go to Cuba and so forth. So I think that part of it is just a lack of awareness about how much we have in common, our shared ancestry, while it may be generations, centuries ago, but how we can use that as a connection and a
Sure.
force for good instead of looking at it as something that separates us.
100%. I mean, we're on the same page, and we have been,
Yeah.
and we've talked about this, honestly. And I think just for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to pull out my teacher hat. We're referring to African
Yeah.
Americans as people of African descent who mostly might be the descendants of enslaved Africans, not exclusively, but who were
Right.
brought up in English speaking households, generally in the United States of America. And we're referring to Afro-Latinos, people of African descent that were kind of acculturated in Spanish and Portuguese speaking countries. We know that there are, overlaps and all of that. So we're pretty much coming from an academic tradition where we do understand the nuances and the variations, but we want to make sure that the audience understands a little bit. And I'll tell you, when I, kind of visited Sao Paulo, before I moved there, and my buddy Pacheco, who is Afro-Brazilian from Porto Alegre, but living in Sao Paulo, he brought me to the Vai Vai Samba School rehearsal in Sao Paulo. And when I was there, I was like, this is just like an HBCU Battle of the Bands. It was homecoming meets the Florida Classic meets, Grambling, whatever. It was like all of these things together. I was like, I know this feeling. I know this energy. I know this ambiance. It was very familiar to me. And as far as I'm concerned, we're not cousins, we're siblings that just happen to speak different European languages and be in cultures where one type of agricultural product was favored over another, and coming from having been imported farm equipment. I know that is kind of a reductionist view, but honestly, that's what these differences are to me. And so, I see them as really, we're all a part of the same beautiful kaleidoscope of cultures in the various ways where our traditions, which were varied when they were coming from West Africa, they were not all the same exact tradition, but also on a scale, a kaleidoscopic kind of scale. We just see that reflected on this side of the Atlantic.
Good job, Professor.
Hey, that's what people come here to learn. Anyway, and we appreciate that. Thank you. But so I lived in Colombia for 4 years, and during that time, I popped down to Cali a few times. It is a city that I have always found to be interesting, very heavily influenced by Afro-Colombian culture, certainly from the port of Buenaventura, which was close by, but also like within the city itself. So how did you end up choosing Cali as your next destination to film?
So I've been to Colombia, different parts of Colombia many times. I love Colombia. I think it's just an absolutely incredible place and so fascinating. And the African influence and Afro-Colombians, I just marvel at how much Afro-Colombians have contributed to Colombian culture. And so I went to Cali on a trip because I'd learning about Petronio Alvarez Festival. And so for those of you, if you're not familiar, it's one of the largest music festivals, Afro-Latino festivals in Latin America.
Amazing.
It's named after Petronio Alvarez, who was a musician and in the Pacific region in Cali, Buenaventura, in that area. And it's named after him, and it's all about celebrating the traditional Afro-Colombian music of the Pacific. So it's the marimba and these traditional sounds and music, which are just, I want to say, heavenly and kind of spiritual. When I hear them, that's my take, and lovely and so beautiful. and there's a certain like calling. And so that's how I wound up, I wanted to go to Petronia for many years. I went and I was just, there are no words, just amazed and
Mm.
delighted and inspired and moved to see
Oh,
Black
that's beautiful.
folks in just this traditional, I think, beautiful traditional costumes, singing with such glory and celebration and honor. There was a prestige. It was just beautiful. And, and it's different from what we traditionally think about often, whether it's in Cali, it's salsa, which is Cali is also the capital of salsa. And
Hmm.
this is a very different form of music. And also hearing about how the musicians come from the communities of the Pacific, because Cali's part of that Pacific region. And so they
Yes.
come from Timbiqui and Tumacu and all these communities that are along the coast. And sometimes they come in paddles and, on the rivers
Mm.
and come in. And I just thought Petronio is a pilgrimage of sorts. That's how, and people coming in once a year just to perform. And I just thought it was really lovely. And we knew we wanted to film at Petronio, hands down. So that's kind of how it got started. And then celebrate the people of the region, their cuisine. I love the art, so painters. And so it's all of that, and giving, hopefully, representation to these just beautiful people.
Oh, that's amazing. You have me already wanting to go and experience it. I mean, it's, you
Yeah.
talk about glory and honor, ain't got time to die. That's for those who are raised in church.
Yes,
But I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
thing. Like, in Black communities in the US, that was often where we would be in touch at most with like our African musical traditions, right? Because that was one of the few
Right.
places historically that we were even allowed to kind of be ourselves
Yeah,
over the 400 years
yeah,
of presence in North America. And certainly you
yes.
see that in other aspects of life in Latin America. That's the beauty of it, that it kind of would seep through into other areas. And so
Oh.
this is, it just sounds incredible. When do they usually hold this event?
So Petronio is usually held in August. It's
Hmm.
what, 4, 5 days, and
Okay.
it's usually held every August. And I really would encourage people, if you haven't been, go. If you've been, go again. But it's
Mm.
just, it's colorful. It's so lively, inspiring, beautiful. It's an amazing celebration of Afro-Colombian music, and that's how it got started. Just for Afro-Colombian musicians to get together and play. And it's grown into this amazing event now. What is it, 2 decades? And it just keeps growing with more and more international visitors coming in. And you can learn about the music, the history, and it's incredible.
Now, what is special about Cali itself to you? Aside from this
Oh,
particular event, like what really
yeah.
resonates for you in the city?
I think it's, there's so much to Cali, and I think it's just a combination. When I'm there, I feel like a caleña. I mean, I feel like I'm from Cali
Hmm.
because I look like so many of the people.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And the spirit, the music, the traditions, I love just talking to people on the
Hmm.
street, the vendors, learning more about salsa, the history of salsa. Um, it's it's so unique. And then that Pacific, being part of, because Cali is part of, as we mentioned, the Pacific region, the Pacific coast. And so there's a feeling about the Pacific. There's a pride in being Afro-Colombian that I think you just feel when you're there. I feel like, and I want, you want part of that. And it is to me so special, that it's just, I think it's just glorious. And all the different communities, and just continuing to learn about Cali. So I find it, the murals, the paintings, I think it's a really special place. And I think it deserves additional attention because people, travel to Colombia and travel to, they know Cartagena or Bogota, and yes, do visit them. But also consider some of the other places like Cali. In the 2 episodes, in addition to spending time in Cali, we traveled to Buenaventura, and Buenaventura is
Mhm.
the port, I say, the port
Yes, I
city
did a little
of
shimmy.
Colombia. So what is it?
Hey.
90% of the, yeah, I love that. 90% of the products for Colombia come in to the port of Buenaventura. And Buenaventura is, you know, predominantly Afro-Colombian. And I think that there are some misconceptions about Buenaventura. I think if you go there and give it a chance, we met with some wonderful midwives that unfortunately, they're not in the show, but you will see them online that carry this tradition um, of being, midwives and this ancestral knowledge that they carry on and pass on to pregnant mothers. And it's just an incredible experience. And people come from all over to learn about this experience. And I said, wow, if I, were pregnant again, which I'm not, but, to have that experience of being pregnant and the exchange, the music that they share with the mothers, the care. We talk about self-care a lot, right? How they
Mm,
care for the pregnant women. They envelop you in warmth and generosity and song.
amazing.
That's in Buenaventura. And I met, at the hotel, this lovely gentleman who worked just at the front desk, and he was studying accounting. And I thought about all this potential in Buenaventura and how the people deserve to be spotlighted and showcased. And so, we meet with the marimba player who's one of the best in Colombia, Baudillo
Mhm.
Guama, and his son Jefferson, just to give you a sense of marimba and its traditions. And so that's Buenaventura. I could talk forever, Ernest. And then we go to San Cipriano. I don't know if have you been to San Cipriano?
No, I never even got to Buenaventura when I was there.
Okay.
I only went to like Cali proper. And so
Yes,
you're talking about other cities in the region that, are their own destinations, right? So I actually
absolutely.
didn't get a chance to kind of get out into the regions. But so please tell us about San Cipriano.
San Cipriano is a little small community. And what's so
Mhm.
neat about it, people will see in the Colombia episode. So we have a Cali episode and a Colombia episode. And
Okay.
I've seen, yes. And so in the Cali episode, we're celebrating Cali. We're at Petronio. I'm salsa dancing at El Museo de Salsa. Um, and in the Colombia episode, we kind of take a more regional look, and that's where we're in we go to Buenaventura, and we go to San Cipriano, excuse me, in the Colombia episode. And so
Okay.
in San Cipriano, it's a natural reserve. It is gorgeous. I'm in Jersey City, right by New York, so I love New York. I love Jersey City, but it's the concrete jungle, right? We've got our
Right.
oasis, Central Park and all that, our parks. But coming into San
Gorgeous
Cipriano,
isn't a word that you would use. I'm sorry for
yeah, it's
represent.
yeah, yeah,
We'll edit that out because I don't want folks
yeah,
from
yeah.
JC coming for me talking about we ain't
Right, right, right.
gorgeous.
No, no. Yes, it
You
has
are.
its
You are
beauty, right? It
gorgeous.
has its beauty. But coming into San Cipriano, you come on this what they call the Moto Bruja. I don't know if you ever heard of that. And
No, no.
it's a motorcycle that's been repurposed, and it's got like a plank on it, and it's on an old railroad tracks. And so you
Okay.
come in. That's the only way to come into San Cipriano
Wow.
is on this
So,
Moto Bruja, and it gives you kind of this ground level look as you come into. You're not covered by anything, like a
mhm.
train or anything, and you come into the town, and you're surrounded by all this greenery, just lush, verde, just so green and beautiful. So I was soaking that in, as I live in, we live in these urban environments. To come in and
Yes.
see all this lush greenery for days is just gorgeous. And then you come into the town, and it's this oasis, beautiful water, crystalline water, waterfalls, you can bird watch. It's an Afro-Colombian town. and they have conservation efforts, and you can go camping, all in that, with the mission of preserving their community, obviously, bringing in tourists, but appreciating the town for as it is, and really working to preserve the just gorgeous surroundings of San Cipriano. And you're in this you're kind of in this other world, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, that just sounds amazing. I really, at this point in my life, I've been spending more time in the outdoors. I've been spending more time with nature and
Yes,
just feeling the regenerative properties of that, the
yes.
healing nature of it. So to see and to hear that there's a place where we as Black folks are able to kind of just be and really embody that, the lushness of nature, and share it with others. It's really heartening.
Oh, absolutely. It's you. I mean, you feel the distress just dripping off of you as you
Mm,
just enter San Cipriano, because you're just surrounded by gorgeousness, and you are surrounded by
mhm.
the greenery as you come in on the Mota Bruja. And if you're escorted and you're around these, in my instance, the Afro-Colombians, and you're like, wow, he looks just like my cousin, my uncle, my,
Mhm.
my aunt,
Yes.
and those connections. It's just it's just absolutely beautiful, and I think inspires me so much to want to continue to share what these communities have to offer, and they want us to come and get to know them and get to know how they live and how they experience life, and there's a real sense of community.
Oh, that's amazing. So then tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you might have had either being there or filming these episodes.
Ooh, no, Ernest, we have no challenges.
No challenges. It was all a cakewalk.
We have no challenges. No, it's and of course I'm kidding. But well, number one is the challenge of just filming and getting a production done, because they can
Mhm.
be, extremely costly. And so I just want to, shout out to the Ford Foundation for supporting, our
Yeah.
efforts, and that's been so helpful. And so
Mhm.
that's the first thing, is just getting, the production itself done. But it's
Yeah.
it's working with people sometimes don't, realize, at least our experiences, sometimes on a shoot, you've got the weather is not, maybe Mother Nature has a different plan for you, and what you had planned,
Yes, she
plan A,
does.
yeah,
Often.
and you want to be
Yes.
outside, may not be what you wind up doing. Or
Mhm.
how about this, when the drone that you want, you're using for a shot, winds up in a tree, and you have to
Oh
call the
no.
fire department to come and get the drone out the tree. Um, and you're, like I said, you've been rained on. I mean,
Yes.
it's somebody, a guest, doesn't show up for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And you have to really move to what is my plan B, C, D, and
Yes.
adapt. And so those are some of the things that, you're constantly faced with, cameramen with equipment, or maybe it's me and I've got to change clothing, or maybe the script needs to be changed. So there's just constantly, this, a lot of decision
Mhm.
making, one after another. And it's, how do you respond to it? How do you pivot and say, just like life, right?
Yes.
Something happens to you. What's your plan B, C, D? Because you don't want
Yes.
to give up. It's not that we're going to give up, but you may have to figure out, okay, it's maybe not a straight line to the goal, but
Mhm.
we're still going to get there. And so those are just a few of the things that we've encountered on some of the shoots, is, what do we do? How do we make it work? That's the question I try to ask. How do we now make it work with what we're faced with?
Yes, I'm smiling because I
Yeah,
definitely tried to give up during many
yeah,
episodes when we had issues.
yeah.
I was like, you know what, y'all can have it. I'm done.
Right,
And
right.
my timeless self, the universe was like, well, if you don't sit down and take
Again,
a 5-minute break and
right.
get back into the game. No, you don't get to quit.
Yes.
So I applaud you for
Yes.
just saying it. Like, it has to be figured out. And no, it doesn't mean quitting. It means recognizing that you're up to something big. And that requires
Yes.
sometimes working through challenges that are uncomfortable and that, you may not even feel equipped to handle, but you are.
Yes.
You got everything you
And you know
need.
what? Yeah, and you know what? I thank you for mentioning that because you know what? Sometimes, look, believe me, I mean, I've shed many a tears, as we're going through whatever cycle we're in the process of trying to get new shows
Yes.
done. And you know what? Sometimes I try and come back to is, I think about, my grandmother growing up in the segregated South, and I think about my
Mm.
ancestors, the ones that, I didn't even know, and I think about enslaved Africans and the transatlantic slave route. And I think, just like you said, you don't have a problem.
You,
You
you
don't have
really don't.
an issue, right? Get up, figure it out,
Hmm.
and know that folks have gone through so many things even more challenging than this
Yes.
little issue you have right now.
And they've done
And
so and
so,
found the joy and still
yes,
been able to keep it. And you're absolutely right. Perspective.
yes,
Sometimes people say it's being humble. It's having perspective. What we're doing
right,
is, impactful, and to have the perspective of it in that we're not curing cancer,
no,
which means none of this is some catastrophic, kind of a
right,
situation. We can figure it out. Yes, we may need to take our break because it can be
yes,
stressful, but in
yes,
the grand scheme of things, we're playing and we're
exactly.
experimenting. And we're blessed. We live a charmed life. We're able to go out and connect with people and help share their stories and give them a voice and a platform to share their own stories. And that is an honor, a privilege, and a blessing.
Ah,
So you doggone right, I'm not quitting.
right,
But I had to tell
exactly.
myself
And I have,
that.
yes, and I have too, and my husband, my parents, you sometimes have
Yes.
to dig down deep,
Listen,
yeah,
let's just keep it cute for the folks at home because I promise
yeah,
you, if we started really talking about that deep digging,
that's right,
folks not ready. But I will say this:
yeah,
I really appreciate the work that you've done. I applaud you for continuing, for having persistence, for knowing that you, as a storyteller, have something to say, and that the people that you connect with have something to say, and that you are
oh,
providing a space that is necessary. There's enough sky for every bird, which is something that
yeah,
Lola Akinmade Orchestrum told me a while ago, and I use it when I talk to other content creators and even, again, our listeners, that you have something to share and you should lean into it, and you're doing it despite the challenges. We get these beautiful episodes, so thank you, Kim Haas.
oh, gracias, Ernesto.
Hey, de nada, un
Thank you,
placer.
thank you so
So
much for all you do, and thank you very much.
Oh, of course, of course. So then tell us really quickly before we go, because I want to keep, I want to like let people listen to this on their lunch break or whatever, commute to
Yes, yes,
work. So what's the most shining moment that you can remember of many shining moments? I don't want to diminish
yes,
any moment, but what is one of the
yes.
most shining moments that you remember from filming these 2 episodes?
Okay, well, I'm glad you said it because it's one of many. So I'll say that.
Sure.
I
Yes,
think,
absolutely.
yes, I think I got to sing backup with Nidia Gongora. That's one of them. I'll say Nidia Gongora is a Latin Grammy nominated singer, and
Hey.
she just is so amazing. And not just it's her voice, her sound, but her philosophy. And she does such
Mm.
good work with displaced children,
Oh.
especially Afro-Colombian and indigenous children who've been forced out of their homes, because that's a big issue in Colombia. And so
Hmm.
she's created this space and has art programs, music programs, has just an incredible spirit. And so we were in her new restaurant in Cali and in a small space, and she sang, and I was one of the, singing a little background, and so I love
Okay.
that. And it was a beautiful lullaby, that it's a traditional
Mm.
lullaby, and it was just lovely. But there's so many wonderful, wonderful memories. So I'd encourage everybody to watch, and you'll see a lot more. But that was one of the, I think, just beautiful moments.
Oh, that's amazing. I know what it's like when you have so many. It's
Yes,
like, I don't want to like again diminish the shine from anybody. It's
right.
just certain things are just like whew. And so that's super cool. I'm glad you had that
Yeah.
experience and I'm glad we get to see it. So how can people not only watch while it's on during Hispanic Heritage Month, but also how can they find out about when they can watch the episodes after, or also stay in touch with you and find out more about
I,
just everything that you're up to?
I think number one, just you can just tune in travelswithkimhaas.com. It's probably the best way. And we have for different cities, locations, the shows when they air on the
Hmm.
website. You can also create TV, plug in your zip code, and you can find out where the show airs, at what time, date in your local area. And anything, reach out to us at info@travelswithkimhaas.com, and we will get back to you as soon as possible with, answer questions. We love hearing from folks, especially after they've seen the show, to think, what'd you think? What did you like? Maybe what did you dislike? That's fine too. Where would you like to see us go? So all of that. And then on social media, of course, you can catch us as well. But I would encourage folks to go to Colombia, and in particular, seek out some of these communities that they may not be as familiar with, like Cali, like Buenaventura, San Cipriano, because they offer just a wealth of really incredible and unique experiences.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much again, Ms. Kim Haas, for being
Thank
out here.
you.
Afro-Latino Travels. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias a ti. Gracias, Ernesto.
Hey, all right, everybody. Thank you so much and tune in. See ya.